Cool. So, welcome to this functional breathing webinar. Over the next 50 odd minutes, going to take us through a little bit of journey understanding breathing from in terms of the functional aspects, understanding what that means, what that is, and a significant part of this webinar is going to be practical. So you are going to do some breathing, but you'll be doing some breathing now. We haven't even started. But we'll be doing some specific breathing to try and make some changes and notice some improvements in the functionality of our breathing, the quality of our breathing, the efficiency of where our breathing, and we're going to leave hopefully towards the end, if I do a decent job, of understanding how that's then going to apply in a physical or sporting or exercise context as well. So very little introduction. Like PB stands for Pro Breathwork. That's my website, and then I'm an Oxygen Advantage Master instructor, which means I run certifications. I think some people have done that actually on the call right now. A couple of you have done the certification with me. I also run the mentoring program. One or two of you have done the mentoring program that I'm one of the coaches on. This is me back when I didn't know any better about nasal breathing with a mouth guard in, playing rugby in my mouth, just casually open, sort of casually mouth breathing for no particular reason. I don't look particularly out of breath at this point. Interestingly, I remember that this was ironically a photo from my last ever rugby game. The week after this, I had a traumatic brain injury in training. That was 10 years ago, and that was the end of my rugby career and not the start of my breathing coaching career, let's say, but it was the starting point for me eventually after a few years looking into breathing and how breathing can help with brain health in the first point for my brain's recovery, but then into then recovery and performance and seeing what it does there. I now work as a coach and as an educator. A lot of my one-on-one clients are professional and international athletes, mainly rugby because that's the sport that I know. And one of the things I try to do with Pro Breathwork and my work with the Oxygen Advantage is educate others, educate coaches, educate people who want to implement it with themselves, and teach you and show you and pull down what we teach in those professional athletes that are at the top of their game, and how can we utilize those exercises, those techniques, those protocols to help you with your breathing, with your health, your well-being, your sleep, your performance, whatever it may be, as the main thing for you. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. I want to get into what we're going to be trying to do. And sort of one thing to say actually on that is that the functional breathing is the foundation of our breathing, is the foundation of even the foundation of our movement as a whole. It's like the simplest movement we do, or simplest might not be the right word. I'm not a linguistic, but it's definitely the movement your body does the most. 20 odd thousand times per day you breathe. Add them up for a year in your lifetime, you ain't going to do as many squats or push-ups or any other or steps walking. You're going to do more. You're going to do more breathing repetitions. I like to think my initial career before, and as I still am now, as a strength and conditioning coach. So I very much look at breathing as a movement and a movement pattern that can be trained, that can be relearned, that can be optimized, can be strengthened, and functional breathing is the foundation for that. And it's literally the starting point. I've got a professional player who's doing his first session with me tonight on Zoom, and we will be doing these fundamental basics in this first session that I'm going to do with you now. Yeah. So, any questions as we go along? Whap them in the chat box. I've muted everyone just so there's not any crazy sort of sound in the background. And then at the end, there'll be time for questions. And if you want to use the chat box, do that. But at the end, there'll be time to be able to, unmute yourself. Let's have a chat and let's answer any questions that way as well. So starting off with just a bit of a headliner, an importance, a bit of a strong statement, but one that I like, one that a researcher from 2016, Chapman et al. Said, if breathing is not normalized, no other movement pattern can be. And I sort of paraphrase that to, if you can't breathe, you can't move. And there's a number of things that go into this. some of which is related to how, when we're functionally breathing correctly, when the diaphragm and the ribcage are working in synchronization together, we create greater stabilization around the lumbar pelvic hip complex. There was a really good study done, I think 2017, where they took people and they assessed their breathing and their movement through a functional movement screen. And those that were diaphragmatic breathers rather than like thoracic upper chest breathers, the diaphragmatic breathers were 87.5%, so nearly 90%, more likely to pass a functional movement screen, or nearly 90% of them, not like nearly 90% of them passed a functional movement screen. So if you're a diaphragmatic breather, you're highly likely to be a better mover. And that functional movement screen was an assessment of movement, but also injury prevention. So you're less likely to get injured when you move better. So breathe well, move well, perform better, less chance of getting injured. Super, 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 super important for all type of sort of athletic and exercise endeavors, but also just enjoying of life, not being in pain, being able to move and do the things we want to be able to do in life. So, next slide, Dave. No, any danger? We go that way. There we go. So, what is functional breathing? I'm probably in a 1 hour seminar going to simplify things down a little bit, but that's simplifying it down so that we can understand it and take something in and apply it straight away. So I've got 4 things here. There will be times in other sessions and other things that I do, or if I'm working with clients, where we might have to tweak these things, we might have to look at things a little bit differently, but the basics and the foundations of these 4 things, 99% of the time, or I can't put a number, most of the time, make a big change for people in their breathing, in their performance, and in their recovery. So those 4 things: your airway, like the holes in your face that you're using to get the air in, and actually doing some work on that airway to help improve that. Some simple things that we can do in how the air is coming in. Then we've got the mechanics of how we're breathing. That's very much linked in terms of the depth of breath, the expansion of our rib cage, and the movement and the activation and strength of our diaphragm. We won't have time to go into like the strengthening of the diaphragm, but that's something if you want to go to take things to another level. But certainly we can strengthen breathing muscles, not just the diaphragm, the intercostals as well. Then the other 2 really important things: the volume of air that we breathe and the rate of our breathing. And the rate of our breathing, the speed of our breathings, is sort of like an obvious one, in that when we're breathing fast, it's difficult for us to breathe calmly, it's difficult for us to breathe deeply. We tend to breathe more from the upper chest. Whereas the volume of air that we breathe is something that gets missed a lot. And the volume of air that we breathe dictates the levels of carbon dioxide within the lungs and within the blood. And carbon dioxide is a vasodilator that helps blood vessels dilate, so it helps improve circulation. It's also the catalyst that allows oxygen to be released from red blood cells. And that's really important, because getting oxygen into your blood is one important thing, but oxygen within your blood is there in abundance. It is it's something that is so important that you have so much of it there. And the ability for it to get out of the blood into your tissues, which is where it ultimately needs to get for cellular respiration, every cell in your body needs this. Carbon dioxide is a key part of that process of getting the oxygen to be released from the hemoglobin in red blood cells. And it helps with the breathing, and how much of it you breathe in. It helps to modulate the pH of your blood. I don't want to go too much into the sort of chemistry side of that, but understanding that the volume of air that you breathe dictates the volume or the amount of carbon dioxide that's staying in your lungs and within your blood, and your tolerance and your sensitivity to that does have an impact, a significant impact, on how efficiently your body can use oxygen that's in your blood. That makes sense? So these 4 things, we're going to go through them, and depending on how I'm feeling, we might go through things in a slightly different way. But let's get a little bit practical to start with, and I'm going to show you something. We're going to gradually get practical. I'm going to show you something first. So for anyone that hasn't come across, this is a pulse oximeter. It's going to come up in a second once it gives me a read. There you go. 77, the top number is my pulse. Don't worry too much about that. I'm alive. The bottom number is my blood oxygen saturation. Normal levels of blood oxygen saturation are 95 to 99. Okay, so you're literally almost full all the time. That is 96. It was 97 at the start. It's going to like fluctuate between 1 point maybe. Yeah. I'm breathing. You know I'm breathing. How do you know I'm breathing? Because I'm alive. Probably at rest, you shouldn't really necessarily see my breathing. There you go, 97. It's going to fluctuate between 96 and 97 probably. 1 point maybe. You know I'm breathing because I'm alive. Now, the reason I'm breathing is not because this bottom number, it's not that my blood oxygen saturation is changing and I'm being triggered to breathe. Even when so what's it? We're on 96 a minute. If I hold my breath, and feel the need to breathe, nothing changed other than it actually went back from it was fluctuating between 96 and 97. And when I held my breath, it was at 96 and actually went up. How did it go up? How was there more oxygen in my blood? The thing that's driving my breathing, it's even gone up further again. The thing that's driving my breathing is not the levels of oxygen going down and then needing to breathe in. What's controlling my breathing is the levels of CO2 that's within my blood, which is comparable to CO2 within my lungs. And understanding that the volume of air that you breathe, that third point down the slide, we're starting with number 3. Why? Because it's important. The volume of air that you breathe, put this down, the volume of air that you breathe dictates the volume of air that you breathe out. Does that make sense? The volume of air I breathe in dictates the volume of air I breathe out. The volume of air you breathe out dictates the CO2 that's left in your lungs, and the CO2 that's left in your lungs is comparable to what's in your blood. That CO2 within your blood dictates how easily oxygen is released into your tissues. 75% of the oxygen that you breathe in, you breathe out with the next breath. You're 97% full or whatever. Your inhalation is not affecting your blood oxygen saturation levels, but it is dictating how much you breathe out and that CO2 that you're getting rid of. So that's a really important point. Okay, keep that in mind, and we're going to come back to that towards the end, but it's a really, 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 really important point. Okay, we're going to go back to the start. So that was point 3. We're going to go back to point 1, your airway. I want you to take a breath in, with a big, wide open mouth. So open your mouth really wide and take a big breath in, or just take a breath in. And those that got their camera on, I can see it. I like it. Look, chest goes up. You can hear it, and it sounds awful, and it's really high up, and it's very shallow. It's not a large volume of air, is it? It's very difficult when you have very little resistance to the airflow coming in for your breath to be deep, for it to be connected to your diaphragm and driven from your diaphragm, and also the volume and the size of it, you aren't very well in control of. Okay? And all of those things are, 1, stressful in terms of nervous system, but 2 is inefficient in terms of where you're filling the lungs up, the speed at which you're breathing. There's a concept called dead space within your lungs and your airways that means that there's about 150 milliliters per breath, depending on obviously the size of the person, but on average, that just can't be occupied. So the faster you breathe, the more air you're potentially wasting in dead space. Also, the faster that you breathe, the more likely you are to lose control of that rate of breathing. When you lose control of the rate of breathing and you end up panting, that's your body's way to get you to stop doing the thing that you're doing when we're talking about exercise. So that doesn't help you with your levels and feelings of fatigue and your ability to carry on and continue and your ability to recover. So keeping a handle on the rate of your breathing, really important. Okay, and again, that's another thing that we're going to come back to. But the mouth breathing that's shallow and fast isn't going to help with that. Okay, so let's go to nasal breathing. Take a breath in, up your nose. Now, mine, as I saw then, was still quite vertical, but it definitely felt like it was coming, starting from a bit lower down, and it definitely lasted longer. The difference, look, and the extra resistance those two little holes provide compared to that big hole in my face is allowing the length of the inhalation to expand and therefore potentially to take a slightly better breath in. Okay, but we're going to do a lot better. I'm going to introduce you to my friend. Let's call him Dave. This is Dave. So we've sliced him down the middle. Okay, here is his nose, the tip of the iceberg. Touch your nose. That's it. That's your nose. Touch your airway in here. You can't, but you can use your tongue to feel the top of your palate. So put your tongue and have a good feel around. Here, put this tongue, your tongue, not Dave's tongue, put your tongue and have a feel in there. It's massive, the whole space. Yeah, that whole space at the top of your palate is equivalent to the bottom of this airway. Does that make sense? You put that tongue to the roof of the mouth and feel it at the top of the roof of the mouth, and then close the lips, teeth not touching. I want you to try and breathe air in, look, along here, and send it back and down. So breathe into the face. Have people seen that demonstration I've done with the thing, sticky the thingy in the nose? Who's some participation? There's hardly anyone with any things on. Has anyone seen that? Do you want me to do it? Where's my little thing? Right. Let me. There we go. It's on demand. Who was that? Was that David? Right. Here we go. So look. Technically speaking, this is Dave's tip of Dave's iceberg, but this is Dave's airway. Yeah. If this is true, if what you are feeling above the top of your mouth is the bottom of your airway, and there is a canal down here, and there's a canal here and one here. If this is true, that that's like more a big hole, that essentially could go in there, couldn't it? In theory. But practice is a little bit better, okay? So look, this will freak some people out, but look, I'm just going to prove Dave's point. So rather than going up where it gets stuck, it's going to go. I'm going to use my other hand. Never change. I always do it left-handed. So rather than up, going back. There it is. And look, I'm fine. I'm not freaking out. I can breathe. Everything's good. There's loads of space in there. Dave isn't special. I'm not special. This is just how air goes back and down. Because you've got to get to your lungs. You don't need to go up. Okay? So let me pull this out for anyone that likes a bit of a show. So it's literally just there. Yeah? Your tongue was feeling where that was. So put that tongue to the roof of the mouth. You can even create a little seal. This is quite a nice little one for you to check. So if I seal my tongue, not like ow, ow, ow. So like a seal like that. Like seal it so it's like stuck to the roof of the mouth. Yeah, keep it on there. Don't try and rip the top of your mouth off, but just seal it to the top of the mouth. Close and then keep the mouth open. Pinch your nose and try and breathe in through your mouth. I can't, Jacko. I know, that's the point. It's helping to seal that airway so that you do breathe through the nose, but it's also helping support the airway and keep it clear, and that's where the tongue is supposed to be. Okay, so you put your tongue to the roof of the mouth with that little bit of seal, just gently, and then close the lips softly, teeth not touching. Breathe into the face. Breathe back along there. Breathe along that line. Follow the airflow And you'll lose it around here somewhere, but it's going to go down. You'll lose the sensation, but it's going to go down. Yeah? Breathe into the face. And then you're like, okay, now I don't feel like my chest is rising, so I feel like it's coming from here. Yeah? Do we feel that? Give me some, those that got the cameras on, and then use the chat box if you're a bit afraid of your camera. Okay, or you can't, you're sort of in the bath or something. Yeah, good. That makes a difference, right? So it's starting to become, rather than being shallow and upper chest, the nose is providing resistance, but the way that we're using that airway, making that airway clearer, and just understanding that airway helps the air to come in. So next time you sort of blowing out of your arse during exercise, rather than mouth breathing, close the mouth, breathe into the nose, take a better quality breath in. Okay, but I want to take it further for us. I want us to understand this further. But that's a sort of key little starting point for us. That's the airway. We've talked about the volume of air we breathe and the rate of our breathing. We're going to come back to those two things. That's as airway covered. We're then going to go into the mechanics side of things, a little bit more detail rather than just it being low down. And as part of this, it's very useful to understand why this is important, where in your body it is, and also how it impacts other structures within the body. Before trying to look at where every different little thing is, just observe that as look at this massive slab of muscle tissue, and there's like little bits that are a bit different and whatnot, but it's one big mesh of tissue. Yeah, and that's what the human body is, and they all, nothing in isolation, they all interact and influence and transfer force between them. The diaphragm is this big thing here that's literally in the center of you. The bottom of the rib cage, it attaches onto the rib cage itself, but it also attaches, the central tendon comes down and attaches onto the spine. And we've got these sort of, it's one big dome, but you can see that this side, the right-hand side, left-hand side of the screen, but the right-hand side of the person is slightly bigger. And the left-hand side of the person, right side of the screen, is slightly smaller, because you have your heart here, your lung on the left, and the hemisphere, the diaphragm on the left, are slightly smaller. We don't need to worry too much about that. That's just something that's naturally there. But when this diaphragm contracts, the middle part, those central tendons pull down towards the spine. The diaphragm itself moves down a few centimeters, and as it's moving down from the central point, pushing down into the middle of it, it's flattening out, it's pushing the sides out. We need the rib cage to articulate outwards for an inhalation, for that expansion to take place. So the rib cage with the intercostals can move, and the diaphragm can move it, and they want to work ideally together. And this is a 2D image, but you are three-dimensional, so it wants to be a three-dimensional expansion of the rib cage. Okay, so let's have a little bit of look at that diaphragm, and also how the rib cage alignment affects the mechanics and our kinetic chain as a whole. Okay, so I'm going to firstly, I'm just going to be, I'm going to sort of like kneel first, actually, and then we're going to come down onto the floor. You can be seated. You don't have to show me your ribs and your diaphragm, but for the purposes of this, because I do far too much running at the moment, I'm quite skinny, so it makes it quite easy to show you ribs, and it's helpful for you to see and be aware. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to find, with your hands, some sensory touch and input, but you're going to find and locate your two lowest ribs. So one on that side and one on the other. And then you can see that they make a line, a triangle, an angle with, and they come together at your sternum, your breastplate. That angle that they make with your sternum, breastplate, we call the infrasternal angle. When I inhale, when I breathe in, and that diaphragm that's attached on the front of them, like here, the central part moves down and flattens out. That angle is supposed to widen, and the ribs widen as I inhale. Okay. The other thing I want you to do, so this is understanding, you're going to use your fingers to feel where your ribs are. Track them all the way down to the bottom. Okay. And look, if I go all the way down to the bottom, down to here. There's the bottom lowest floating rib. Yeah, my hip bone's there. They're like about an inch apart. It's low down. Then find your collarbone. Okay, your collarbone should be easier to find than your first rib. Your first rib is actually higher than your collarbone, but let's just use the collarbone so it's easy. Look, that there to there, that's your lung. Well, sorry, that's your rib cage, and your lung's inside it. That's your rib cage. It's literally, apart from your head and your arms and your legs, it's you. You are your rib cage. Okay, so feel it on the other side as well. Like that is it. Like you can feel how big that area is. Okay, and we're going to get a little bit acquainted with this front portion of the rib cage. I'm going to use the floor to help us get acquainted with the back portion. So you're going to use your hands and you're going to feel those ribs. And what I want you to do is try, and you're touching your ribs. This isn't like someone else's. So normally, sometimes people feel weird about touching their own ribs. Like, relax, they're yours. And it's important that you relax your stomach. If I tense my stomach, I can show you my abs, but I cannot show you my ribs, and I cannot get anywhere near that diaphragm. If I relax this, relax, hello, there's Mr. Ribby. I can feel those ribs, and look, one thing I can do is I can feel those ribs. Ooh, they move. Yeah, your rib cage is supposed to move. Knowing that and realizing that, and actually having the ability to relax your stomach and your abdominal muscles is really important. I spent too much time as a kid doing sit-ups, trying to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger and building up abdominal muscles that actually restrict when they're tense. Look, they pull my ribs down and in. They restrict you from being able to breathe in correctly. We need to learn to be able to relax the stomach. Okay, so stomach relaxed, and you can feel in there with your fingers. Get in and try and touch that diaphragm a little bit underneath. Don't freak yourself out too much, but can you have a little bit of a palpation over there? Can you wiggle? Can you move the ribs a little bit? Okay, and then shake your fingers off and relax. Now, without touching them, I bet you can feel them, as in you feel more aware of them. There's a heightened awareness. There's mechanoreceptors in your skin. They're very sensitive to touch. Take a breath into the face now, along that line with the tongue to roof of the mouth, and I bet you can feel that area expanding out a little bit more. It's like your heightened awareness of that, and the touch is helping program your brain to understand where in this trunk area you're trying to get moving. Yeah, give me a little bit of a thumbs up or something in the chat box if that you can notice a change sensation. Yeah. Okay, then the next thing is where that diaphragm, yeah, it's making a curved shape, dome shape on where those ribs are. So I'm going to put my finger here, somewhere near the middle, and I'm going to show you a strong contraction of the diaphragm. It's deep inside. It's not on the outside. It's deep inside, and it's difficult for people to feel it and know what it feels like because we're too used to superficial muscles. Yeah, everyone can tense their bicep because you've done it before. But actually, to tense your diaphragm, how do you tense your diaphragm? It contracts on an inhale, so it must be on an inhale. If I try to inhale but hold my breath, a blocked inhalation, so I breathe in, breathe out, and pinch my nose, and I'll try to do one breath in. You see it go boop, boop. It wants to, when I breathe in, pull down and flatten out with that expansion, but because I'm trapping the air when I hold the breath, it's more of an isometric, a pulsing. So I want you to try. I want you to let me know in the chat or on the screen. You go, yeah. Your finger, you're going to put your hand, finger, in that central, where that central tendon is. It's deep inside, it's not on the outside. Okay? You breathe in, you breathe out. You pinch the nose, you just try to breathe in once, but just try to breathe in quite strongly, obviously, whilst you can't get any air in. And you should feel a pulsing in here. If you're used to breathing with your upper chest, you'll do this. And you'll be like, I can't feel anything. Relax your shoulders, relax your neck. The intention has got to be from here. And this is trying to go down and flatten out. So it's like a pulsing because you're not letting it. Yeah? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Yeah. Goran has given me the thumbs up or the okay sign. Anyone else feeling it? Kelly, can you feel it? Yeah. Okay, good. Right. Now we're going to get down onto the floor. You want to, one thing, like, once you've done that, what's quite good to do is, this will make sense to any sort of computer programmers, not that I am one, but I'm just going to use the term, well, everyone uses this term, don't they? Like download, right? So what I want you to do is do one more, but try to download that sensation that you create. So breathe in, breathe out. Okay, today, try and breathe in strongly, really strongly. And download that sensation, that contraction, that activation that you made, download that to your memory bank so that you can check in. Okay, when you take a breath in now, are you feeling a similar thing? It's just not going to be as strong because you're going to allow it to move. Yeah? And then we're going to use that down the floor. So we're going to come down onto the floor. Come onto the floor. We're going to move Catherine's grandma's tuffet out of the way so that we can lie down. Okay. You are going to, firstly, lie flat on the floor with your legs straight. Okay? And I want you to be aware of where your head is on the floor, your back is on the floor, your bum is on the floor, where your legs and heels are on the floor. Okay? And we're going to just get some appreciation of the position of the rib cage, how it affects the kinetic chain, so the whole of your body, and its alignment and its stacking. And then also, really importantly, why the position of the rib cage is so important before we start talking about the articulation and movement of the rib cage. And we're going to try and get that rib cage moving nice and three-dimensionally, and we're going to feel that diaphragm synchronization with it. Yeah, we're going to start to build all of this in together. But the positioning of it, really important for its movement, but also for the movement of the rest of the kinetic chain. What we said at the start: can't breathe, can't move. Yeah. So compensations through the body because of ribcage positioning. So I want you to find your sternum, your breastplate. Okay. You don't have to spit it out like I do. I can make a nice noise. All right, so there's my sternum. I then want you to be aware of your head on the floor, your back on the floor, your bum on the floor, and you're going to put your fingers on, find the front of your pelvis. Okay. And I want you to push that sternum as high towards the sky, the ceiling, as possible. So I'm going to lift and push my sternum up, push it towards the ceiling, and you'll feel your pelvis roll forward. You'll feel your back arching and lifting up off the floor as you lift the sternum towards the ceiling. Okay? I then want you to pull the sternum down towards the floor. Really push it into the floor. And as I push it into the floor, you'll feel your head slide and you'll get shorter and compressed, and you'll feel your pelvis tuck underneath. And if you push down even further, eventually you want to do a sit-up. Okay? So just do a few gentle movements where you explore that full range, where you drive that sternum towards the ceiling, feel the pelvis roll forward into an anterior tilt, feel the back arching, pull the sternum down, feel yourself compressing, feel the head sliding, feel the pelvis tucking underneath to a posterior tilt. Okay? And appreciate that where you put your sternum is affecting your spine, your neck, your head, your pelvis. Probably even your feet are moving a little bit as well. Rib cage position, we saw how big it was, and where you put that rib cage, the rest of the body has to try and find some alignment off the back of it. So the position of the rib cage is key for functional movement, but then also the starting point of it's going to be key, as we're going to feel now, to actually the movement and articulation of the rib cage to let then the diaphragm work well. So the first thing we're going to do after that is we're going to bend our knees, put our feet flat. Okay. Then straight away, what you'll probably feel is, if you're aware, like your pelvis position is going to sit a little bit more neutral, your back is going to sit a little bit more neutral. Okay. And what I want you to do is I want you to try and create as much length through your spine as possible. So my head towards the door behind me, and keeping my pelvis still, or even get my pelvis go that way. So almost like a little bit of a wiggle to create as much length through my spine as possible. Okay, so where that then feels good. I want you to be aware of the sensation of your back on the floor. And I want you to appreciate that your back on the floor is your rib cage. it's almost funny to me. I was teaching this the other day, going like, why do we even call it the back? Like, it's the rib cage. It's your posterior ribs. We just call it back. So feel your rib cage at the back on the floor. So your posterior ribs on the floor. Okay. And then what I want you to do is I want you to increase that sensation of the back ribs pushing against the floor. So I'm going to in order to, I'm going to gently, you won't even see it, but you'll feel it. You're going to move about a millimeter, but you're going to pull the rib cage down, not compress, and you can keep length through the spine, but you're going to gently pull the rib cage down towards the floor. You'll feel your lower back probably flatten a little bit and some pressure sort of directly down from that sternum. Okay, keep length through the spine, but pull that sternum down a little bit. Okay, and then relax off. Okay, we're going to compare these two positions. So completely relaxed, not pulling the sternum down, but just completely relaxed. Hands resting on the outside of the ribs, fingertips around your belly. Take a breath in through the nose, staying completely relaxed. And what you'll feel is your belly rising towards the ceiling. Yeah? The diaphragm, when we're lying down like this, it's not having to do any of its like stabilization and its postural control. You can just do the breathing part. And you're very supported, not stressed. We don't need to breathe into the upper chest. So we're breathing low down. We feel the belly rising. But depending on the positioning of your rib cage, it's going to feel very one-dimensional, belly going towards the ceiling. Whereas that's negating and not allowing the correct movement of the diaphragm and the position and articulation of the rib cage. So compare that relaxed position with a active position where about 5% effort, it's a very low level of effort, but you're just going to pull the rib cage down about 1 millimeter. So I'm going to pull the rib cage down towards the floor, and what you'll feel is like you'll push through your feet or your hamstrings a little bit. Keep length through the spine, but actively feel that rib cage connected to the floor. For me, it's a sensation of feeling the sternum connected to my spine. It's obviously not touching it, but my sternum feels connected to my spine, and my rib cage feels connected to the floor. I can feel more pressure in the floor underneath me. So create that sensation. Okay, your ribs at the front might flatten a little bit. Then take a breath into the face with the tongue on the roof of the mouth. And now what you'll feel is, yeah, the belly will still rise, but it's not on its own. Now you feel those ribs widening underneath your hands. Give me a thumbs up if you can feel that, or use the chat box more. But you don't worry about the chat box. You're away from your computer. But hopefully you can. You can feedback later. So keeping the rib cage actively connected to the floor, sternum connected to the spine. You breathe in, and the ribs are widening now, as well as the belly, sort of expanding. And I want you to close your eyes so you can go a little bit more internal with the sensations that you feel. And I want you to feel, yes, the hands can feel the ribs widening underneath. You can feel the upward movement of the belly. But can you inside feel the diaphragm moving down towards your pelvis? Remind yourself of that sensation that you downloaded and the diaphragm contracted strongly. And then the last little bit I want you to try to feel and sense with the rib cage connected to the floor. As you breathe in, diaphragm moves down, ribs move out to the side, belly sort of expands as well as part of it. But also feel air going into the back of the rib cage. Can you feel the back ribs expanding and pushing into the floor a little bit more? So you create a truly three-dimensional expansion. You can feel it expanding all around us. And as you inhale, keep it very quiet so we control the rate and speed of our breathing. Notice that it fills from the bottom up when you do this. When you get the ribcage online, the diaphragm's moving down, the ribcage expanding three-dimensionally low down. So that's drawing air into the bottom portion of the lungs. If you want to let it keep filling, it fills from the bottom up. And you can keep inhaling and take a larger volume of air in and the chest sort of expands, but it's not a lifting of the chest up, it's an expansion, broadening, widening. You can even let air go in between your shoulder blades and that get wider. And it's going to feel like a much larger volume of air that you can take in comparison to probably ever, or certainly those breaths we took at the very beginning. Because you are filling up correctly, it's functional breathing. We're breathing from the diaphragm, it's drawing air to the lowest portion of the lungs. We're expanding three-dimensionally, and we're filling from the bottom up. And when we do fill up, that is also expanding as well, rather than just globally lifting and extending through the back and the thoracic, which actually compresses the back of the rib cage. Okay, so you can come back up off the floor, and then we can take ourselves to a seated position. Yes, Paul's saying he's having problems with his connection. There will be a recording. Yes, it's currently being recorded. Okay, so come back to a seated position. And now remember what we just did. But what we just did was the simplest position, the most supported position. Your diaphragm, when you're lying on the floor like that, doesn't need to stabilize your spine. Whereas when you sit upright, without being supported behind you, one, you've not got that support, so the diaphragm's got to do some sort of stabilizing work, as well as breathing, rather than just breathing. And you haven't got any sensation of like anything behind you if you're not resting in the back of the chair. Okay, but can you create that long spine? Can you think about just that rib cage position? Just pull it back a little bit, connect that sternum to the spine without crunching. So I'm staying long and tall. Can I pull that rib cage back a little bit? Maybe use your hands to start with. Can you take a breath into the face? Quietly feel that expansion happening low down here, diaphragm moving down, rib cage expanding three-dimensionally. And it's going to feel a bit different because now you're upright rather than lying on the floor, and that diaphragm isn't just breathing, it's having to stabilize. And then the next stage for you would then be go to like standing up. And can I, while standing, think about being long and tall, rib cage not projected forward or collapsed down. I'm pulling it back to keep it on line. I might use my hands to feel, breathe into the face, feel the diaphragm move down, feel the rib cage expanding all around, and I can feel from the bottom up. And mechanically, my airway is good. My rib cage is expanding three-dimensionally, and the position of my rib cage is helping with that. I'm connected to my diaphragm, and my diaphragm and rib cage are working together to facilitate the correct movement of that diaphragm. As we inhale, it pulls down and flattens out, and you know where it is because we located it with our fingers. Okay, so mechanically, hopefully that all makes sense. The last little bit for us tonight, and hopefully you can start to apply this straight away. Yeah, just literally as you're listening now, can you be aware of that breathing? The missing link that a lot of people don't understand, don't get taught, there may even be a coach and they've never been taught this for whatever reason, is the bit around the volume of air that we're breathing, our ventilation, the effect that when I started, let me just come back to that first slide. When we're talking here, the volume of air that you were breathing, dictating and being related to the amount of CO2 within your lungs and within your blood. This is where we're talking about the biochemistry. This is where we're talking about that release of oxygen from your blood into the tissues. The volume of air is the thing that's dictating that. And what's really important is my volume of air, or my minute ventilation. So that'd be like the volume of air that I'm breathing in 1 minute, which is equal to my respiratory rate multiplied by my tidal volume. And the tidal volume is just the volume of air in each breath. Yeah, so The volume, the size of a breath multiplied by the speed of my breathing equals the volume of air that I'm breathing in a minute. Yeah, that's my minute ventilation. That minute ventilation needs to match the metabolic demands of the exercise. So if you're sat here listening to me, your metabolic demand is very low. Therefore, the volume of air that you're breathing doesn't need to be very large. The definition of over-breathing and hyperventilation is breathing more than your metabolic demands. So at rest like this, I should have a low respiratory rate. I don't need to be breathing fast, and I don't need to be breathing a large volume of air. As I start exercising, I want to ensure that my minute ventilation matches my metabolic demands. Not breathing more than you need to, and also not breathing necessarily less than you need to, but breathing less than you need to would actually be a training modality, it'd be a way of training your breathing. Yeah. But typically we'd be wanting it to match it when we're thinking about trying to optimize our performance. What naturally happens is our respiratory rate speeds up with any type of stress, but particularly in exercise. Yeah, our respiratory rate speeds up. And our respiratory rate can speed up so fast to the point where we end up with that fast mouth panting. Yeah, and when we're fast mouth panting, our tidal volume, the size of the breath we're taking, are very, very short and shallow, and mechanically very poor. Yeah, very inefficient. So in terms of where we're getting the oxygen to, we're just filling the upper chest rather than getting it into the lower portion of the lungs, where we've got the greatest density of alveoli and the greatest amount of blood because of gravity. So in order to maintain control of my respiratory rate during exercise, as I said, then I want to be able to control my tidal volume, the volume of each breath I take. And hopefully you just felt then that the quality of the volume of air that you were able to take in, that always started low down but could become greater if you needed it to, is going to allow you to increase the size of your breath as you start exercising, to allow you to maintain some level of control of our respiratory rate whilst matching a volume of air that you need to meet the metabolic demands of the exercise. Yeah, the harder you're working out, the more CO2 that you're creating, the more your respiratory drive is going to go up. And being able to maintain control of that is one of the key things to being able to improve your performance, reduce levels of fatigue, and improve recovery. Yeah. I guess the thing that wraps around all of this is those mechanics. And if you want to get better at the mechanics, practicing those mechanics is obviously going to be one of them. But two, once you've got good quality mechanics, in order to make, for exercise, to make your breathing mechanically more resilient, better, stronger for exercise, we then need to start adding some resistance to our breathing muscles. And we can do that with things like the sports mask or some exterior load or resistance bands. You know, we can provide resistance to our breathing muscles in order to train them. They don't get trained through just exercising, because all that you do, typically people just go to mouth breathing and there's very little resistance there. If you go to your nose, you're providing some level of resistance. So a starting point is trying to do as much of your exercise through your nose, but don't go to, let's just say this, going to like keep it nasal as I've got written on my budgie smugglers. But if I'm going because I can't control the rate of my breathing and the depth of my breathing, my tidal volume, then I'm breathing, yes, with my nose, but everything else about my breathing is really poor. So that's not really a great route forward for me. So keep it within context. Yeah. And then I guess the simple thing that we can do is we can think about our airway, and we can think about the speed of our breathing and the volume of air that we're breathing, and mechanically how we're doing it, whilst we're just doing everyday tasks around the house or driving to work or at work or whatever. Like a little bit of soft awareness on our breathing goes an awful long way. Not getting obsessed by it, but some awareness to our breathing goes an awful long way to helping you breathe better. And whether you're really into exercise and sports, the most amount of breathing that you're going to do is away from your exercise and sport. So don't neglect the impact that that's going to have. Yeah. So just to finish, before I just leave some time for some questions. If you if you want to go further these things, a lot of the time I try to put these free webinars on because I believe that the basics of breathing, the foundations of this, like, should be taught for free. We shouldn't leave school not understanding this stuff. Yeah. So at probreathwork.com you'll find two free courses. One is Foundations of Breathing, which is a free course. You'll find loads of free videos from me on Instagram. That's my Instagram. I think some of you will have found me from there. I'd love you to share something about the webinar and tag us in that tonight, to just like help try and spread that message that there is great information out there for people to help them with their breathing. But a lot of people aren't aware, they're not able to find it, or they don't know where to look for reliable, trustworthy help and advice and education on it. So there's a free foundations course, and then there's also a free course for stress and anxiety management. Then if you're really into your sports and stuff, you want to take it further, I've got some courses that go into sports performance, one that's specific for like high intensity training, one for movement and mobility. So there is, until Sunday, there is 50% off all of those courses. So there's two free ones, but there's 50% off all those other courses in my Black Friday deal, because you got to do a Black Friday deal, haven't you? So it's 50% off, and that ends on Sunday. And then I've got one exciting little thing to share with you. No one knows about this because it's something I've been wanting to do for months. It's something that I've only managed to get round to doing, literally finalizing it today. So this is currently live on the website, but no one knows yet. It's not starting until January, so you got a bit of time to sort of get ready and prepare. But I'm going to be running a 3-week breath holding course online via Zoom, but it's going to be live via Zoom. There'll be recordings of all the sessions. If you can't make them live, that's also fine. You'll get access to those recordings for the duration of the lifetime of the lifetime of me and the website. Certainly longer than 3 weeks, hopefully. And this is for people wanting to utilize breath holding for sports and exercise performance. It's a big part of what I do with the professional athletes I work with. This is something that I've wanted to, have been developing for years and wanting to put together for people out there. So it's going to start in January 2024. There's currently, I'm running an early bird offer on it for until the end of the year. So until 31st of December, it's reduced from 149 to 95 quid. So as a thank you for joining the webinar, the code webinar75 gets another 20 quid off it. So it's webinar75 gets you that 3-week course starting in January. No one even knows about it yet. I'm literally the first to tell you. You get that for £75. So if you're interested, I will put a link in I'm going to send an email out with the replay to this webinar, and I'll put a link in about that if anyone is interested in joining. Or if you head over to probreathwork.com now, you'll see it under one of the courses that's just gone live on the website. So I am going to answer any questions if anyone has one. I've got, if anyone's in the UK, on Sunday, I think we've got someone booked on this morning, so I think maybe we've got one spot left. Maybe we could sneak another one too if you come in as a pair. A 3-hour workshop, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Manchester. And then that's on Sunday, 3rd of December. Then on the 9th of December in South Wales, in Cardiff, which is a Saturday, same thing, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. They're on the website as well. Right, really informative. Missed your workshop Sunday, but we'll be looking to go to the next one. Philip. Oh yeah, we did. Well, we ran, so Rooted Life, we ran it was more of a cold water breathwork nature. It's more of the well-being stuff that I'm part of. Rooted Life is a company that I'm part of, a group of experts helping with health and well-being, and I do sort of the breathing specialist, I guess, in that. There'll be more connection event days like that next year. We just haven't got the diary set for them yet. So check out rootedlife.co.uk if you're interested in the overall health and wellbeing aspect of it. Florence, interesting. Ribs in is one of the cues we learned in our yoga teacher training. For instance, in mountain pose, standing pose, it's going to be interesting to notice the difference in breathing when we do that in my next practice. Yeah, I think it's really, Florence, really, if you're still on the call, it's really interesting that like a cue like ribs in, like, I don't even know what that means. If I put 20 people in a room and I say ribs in, you're going to get probably everyone doing something different, or not necessarily. But I just feel like I don't feel like the education we've been given as coaches and the language that we've been taught to use are adequate coaching cues for something that people find really difficult. So yeah, just think about the words that we use to describe someone, to tell someone what to do. I know a lot of people, if I say ribs into them, they'll suck their belly button in. They'll suck it in, and they'll start breathing the wrong way around. Rachel, fab session. Thank you for joining, Rachel. Lewis is interested in coming to the certification. When's the next online certification? What's the difference with the official OA online certification? So you can do the certification with Patrick McKeown or any of the master instructors. So I'm one of those master instructors. The Oxygen Advantage certification, whether it's done in person, it's done over 3 days. If it's done online, I tend to do it over I do 8, there's 7 lessons, and I do an 8th additional lesson, sharing everything that I've learned working in professional and international sporting environments. So I share that extra lesson as a lesson 8. I'm going to be doing one starting in March. It's to be finalised, but it's going to start probably the last week in March, online, and we do one lesson a week for 8 weeks. And each lesson lasts 2 hours. Yeah, if you do it in person, there's in February in Nottingham, I'm running it in person over 3 days, the 9th to 11th of February. I'm also doing it as a full retreat. So accommodation, food, and a retreat centre in Scotland in May. So that's the 17th to 19th of May. Over 3 days, all your food, all your accommodation, and all the access to all of the ice bath, sauna, jacuzzi, all of that at the retreat centre in Scotland. Yeah, they're all coming up next year. Can you help with the? So you get, and the qualification, it doesn't matter who you do the OA, so the Oxford certification with, it's the same qualification. Yeah, it means you're fully qualified, you can get fully insured, and you can go off coaching. If you do it with me, you can join my mentoring group and get ongoing support directly from me and the group of, there's over 100 coaches that I've trained to be Oxford coaches. Now, so you get to join that group as well. Can you help with sleep apnea, mouth training, exercise techniques to strengthen the muscles and help with breathing better at night? Breathing better at night, like you want to work on your conscious breathing during the day, John. We can tape the mouth at night to keep the mouth closed, but even starting by trying to sleep on your side rather than lying on our back. When we lie on our back, our mouth drops open because gravity just pulls the jaw open. There's a whole nother session that we can do on that. If you go onto probreathwork.com, the free foundations course has detail about breathing for sleep in the final module. So check that out. That's probably the best starting point. And then if you still have questions, reach out to me on email. You're all going to get an email from me on this, or the emails on the website as well. So I'm going to send you the link. There's sometimes people have asked questions privately about one. This often comes up, like deviated septum or broken noses, like should I have an operation to have it reset? I think one of the things that we know is a doctor or a surgeon will reset your nose or do something with deviated septum, but they won't send you home with a retraining your breathing program because they don't understand and appreciate that. So if you've spent X number of years, months, weeks breathing through your mouth because your nose is all blocked, do we really think that just because you clear the nose that your brain automatically starts using it? Because you've generated a new habit of how to breathe. So whether you have an operation and go through with the operation or not, you still need to train. You still need to understand your breathing, the importance of your tongue, getting air to come in rather than up, and the mechanics of your breathing, your diaphragmatic breathing. So I would recommend that you work on your breathing regardless of whether you have an operation or not. Whether you have the operation or not, that's obviously your decision. There are some of, interestingly, I'm not just saying this because of the breath holding course I'm going to run in January. Some of the breath holding really helps to clear the nose. There's a gas in the nose, nitric oxide, that's vasodilating. I have had 2 clients that both were booked to have an operation on their nose from, been broken badly through contact sports. One of them, after 3 sessions that we did just via Zoom online, he cancelled his operation because even though his nose wasn't perfect, like the work that we'd done had really cleared it up and enough that he was happy and he didn't really want to have the operation. The other client, they still went through and felt like they wanted to have the operation. So it's obviously individual choice, and it depends on how badly it's affecting your breathing. Yeah. Rosemary, thank you for joining. Is the content of your other courses sport, movement, this about breath holding? You've just mentioned part of the certification program. I was planning to buy them, but if you do the certification, maybe it's not necessary. So if you do the full, so Lewis, yeah, if you do the full certification, you're going to get access to all of the online instructor portal with the Oxygen Advantage that has, all of the exercise and all the techniques. I guess what you're not necessarily, and you'll get taught and coached by me if you want the sort of the programming and everything that I've developed, having worked with these professional and international athletes. Then that's what I try to put in my pro breathwork courses. So yeah. When I do road running and nasal breathing, I eventually run out of breath. Is it because of fitness, overtraining, not matching my nasal breathing ability? Yeah, you're interestingly, if you put, it's really good, it's interesting words, aren't they? Like terms, like we had that like ribs in, run out of breath. If you put your pulse oximeter on when you've technically in your mind used that phrase, I feel like I've run out of breath, you won't have run out of any oxygen. So when we say run out of breath, what do we mean? Your blood oxygen saturation's that's 98. Normal is 95 to 99. You only drop out of normal ranges if you've got a problem with your respiratory, like healthy lungs, or if you hold your breath. When you're running and you feel out of breath, it's that your body can't handle the accumulation of CO2 that you've generated, and it needs to get you to stop. So it can then normalize and get back to homeostasis. So you won't have run out of oxygen when we run out of breath. It's just that you can't handle the rate at which your body is generating carbon dioxide. So you can train, and that's what I'll be doing in that breath holding course, train your ability to tolerate larger quantities and greater rates of carbon dioxide so you can manage that respiratory rate. And then working on our mechanics of breathing and our ability to fill from bottom up and expand through it eventually helps us build up that tidal volume, the volume of air that you breathe. That's going to then help us maintain our respiratory rate. When you wrap increased tolerance to carbon dioxide, and also like the psychological impact of how it feels to feel out of breath, and we add all of that together, we get a better performance out of our body and out of our nervous system. Particularly in running is a great one for it. That's why I love running. And a great question, Jax. Rebecca, thank you. Really enjoyed the breathing into the face was a game changer to help control, as was one of your IG lives on a Tuesday morning. Yeah, I do Instagram lives if you like freebies. I do an Instagram live every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. They're completely free, of course, they're on Instagram. Susie, yes, muscle strength exercises to make jaw stronger would be good. Are there any recommendations? I don't do there's some tongue exercise, but like specifically jaw, not necessarily. A coach who's become a friend of mine, really good, Eric from Flow Ops, he does a lot of that stuff. So if you really want to delve deep into that, Susie, I would check out Eric from Flow Ops. We've filmed a course together when I was in Canada. He's based in Canada. When I was in Canada this year, we filmed a short course together. That is going to be out. I don't think I'd like to say I'll get it done before the end of the year, but I probably won't get it all edited up by the end of the year. But that will be out soon. But he's already got a membership and courses and stuff, and the work he does is fantastic. So if you really want to get into like the airway, the jaw strength, the tongue strength, he's your guy for that. So Eric at Flow Ops, Flow like FLOWOPS. Yeah, totally agree, Jacko. Always important to show what you mean with a cue, like the ribs. Okay, yeah, often people live. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, Eric Flow Ops is here. Also, I've noticed that I frequently take deep breaths, but feel the need to top it off further, followed by a longer exhale. Can you provide more insight into why this happens, please, Anton? Someone asked about sighing. It ultimately, a lot of the time, it will come. Our understanding at the moment is more that it's this relationship with carbon dioxide that my body wants to. It's the exhale, it's the release, it's the getting rid of the carbon dioxide. One large breath and one large exhale can reduce your carbon dioxide levels from something like 7 to 16 milligrams of mercury pressure, and normal levels are like 40. So you can drop a third off your or more off your levels of CO2 within the lungs, which is comparable to in the blood, by just taking one big breath like that. And when we're sensitive to it and our breathing wants to be regular, when it becomes irregular, like with a big sigh or a big yawn or something, it's often a sign that we need to do a little bit of work on our breathing, and some exercises in that free foundations course, and also the exercises in like frequent yawning and sighing is often when the nervous system is a little stressed. So the stress and anxiety course that again is free on my website, exercises that are really good, there, Anton. And a lot of the time it's putting in like short pauses after sighing to allow that CO2 to accumulate up is one simple thing that we do. But check out the free courses on the website. They're there for you to use, and they're completely free. Probreathwork.com, the foundations course or the stress and anxiety course is free. What was the driver, David? What was the driver to get you into coaching breathwork to people? Did something happen that switched that light bulb? Yeah, I had a brain injury 10 years ago, and my brain needed help, and it took quite a number of years before I found breathing as a way to improve blood flow and oxygen supply to my brain and look after my brain health. But I was seeing the impacts it was having on like sleep, recovery, performance, and it was the drive for me was that I wish I knew this when I played professional rugby. Played 316 professional games of rugby, and not one of them I knew anything about breathing, and I wish I did. And so my drive and passion for this within sports is to share with people that are still playing their sport now to help them with what I wish I knew when I played. Susie, just about to do the Oxford course with Patrick. Would it be better to do it with you? Is it the same? Well, Patrick is who taught me. Patrick is the man. So the opportunities are you can choose your teachers. I love Patrick, and I love the way he teaches and the way he taught me. And I would personally prefer to be taught by him, but I can't teach myself, whereas some people like the way I teach it, and that's just personal preference. It's the same qualification, it's the same information, but some people will prefer just the way different people explain it. Cool. Right. Thank you all.
Oh, wait a second. I've got a question. Can you
You
hear
got a
me?
question, James? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I actually really appreciate you telling your kind of story a bit about your injury. I'm actually going through like a really serious illness at the moment, affecting kind of my breathing and digestion. And essentially, when we are kind of lying down and, looking at the abdomen and the diaphragm and everything,
Yeah,
but essentially my diaphragm my abdomen kind of goes inwards. It's kind of like this. It's
yeah.
really dysfunctional. And I think that's the path towards healing for me. So I was wondering if, like in your work, or if you know of any resources where, you kind of go in and do body work and you kind of approach that dysfunction and get some structural change, because it's definitely a kind of mechanical structural issue for me, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. So some like hands-on work, you mean, that from someone to
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
yeah, you'd need to see like a sort of specialist physio or osteopath that could
Mm.
work in that area. I know someone in London that is very good.
Okay.
I could put you in touch with that. It depends if how far you are from London. Um, yeah, that's quite a bit like so. Yeah, I'm not medically trained, this and that type of thing. Like I'm not your person to go and do that. But yes, there's one person that springs to mind straight away. He's in London. I can give you his details. If you when I'm going to send out the replay later, either tonight, or if it
Yeah.
depends how long it takes or later. I'm going to send out the replay with the links to that. If you reply to that email, just saying, "Hey, it's James asking about the osteo in London," and I'll send Shay his details.
Okay, yeah, I really appreciate that. Is he kind of um well, I've been seeing like rolfers and stuff like that. Do you know rolfing?
Okay, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've heard of. I've not
Yeah.
experienced it.
So I've seen a lot of rolfers and I've seen a lot of people, but like I've seen respiratory consultants and gastro consultants, and they don't really have the answers. And I feel like this path has the answers. So
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So in this case, he's an osteopath. He's a functional medicine practitioner. Um, we've done some work together on breath. Like
Yeah.
he's the real deal.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. I'll give you an email. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and don't necessarily take David shared someone, which I'm not. A lot of you will have found me through Instagram, so this statement's going to be like a terrible statement because some of you will have found me from Instagram. But um, don't necessarily search for your medical answers on YouTube and Instagram. They may well be there, and there's some great people there as well. But it's not always the best place to seek medical advice. Um, but there's amazing people out there as well, isn't there? Cool. All right, thank you very much, everybody. If you have any questions following on from this, obviously you're going to get that email with the link for the replay, and yeah, just reply to that email, and I'll get back to you personally on that. And then if anyone's interested in that breath holding course in January, I'd be excited to see. This is something I've been cooking up for a couple of years, so I'm excited to put that together. So hopefully, see some of you there. Thanks for joining. You've been breathing. I've been Jacko. Till next time, keep it nasal.